Hey, it's Mike here, and today, eyes. What can you do to keep your eyes in tip-top shape for longer using lifestyle changes like diet, etc.? Yeah, we're sort of in the realm of biohacking here, but you might more appropriately call it eye-o-hacking. Have you heard of it? Well, now you can't unhear that. Anyway, of course you can get eye surgeries and stuff like that, but consult your doctor about that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about perhaps ways to prevent that. How can your body use nutrients and other factors to maintain your eye health to the age of 100 and maybe beyond? And we'll even get into some studies that show an improvement in eye health, which is pretty amazing. However, it's really ironic because I researched this topic so hard that my eyes are a little bit bloodshot and strained. So let's just go. It's really important to start by understanding what the main risks of actual vision loss are and blindness as we age. And this actually varies a lot depending on your ethnic background. From this study on the US at least, and we can see that the main risk for Hispanics is glaucoma, the main risk for white folks out there is macular degeneration, and for black people it is cataracts, which also is the main risk globally. And for some visual context here, we have a diagram of the eye, and we can see cataracts, as you may know, is a issue with the lens clouding there, and then we have age-related macular degeneration, which is issues with the macula, which is in the retina toward the back of the eye, and then finally we have glaucoma, which is an optic nerve issue all the way in the back, and then we have some other ones we're going to cover, like floaters, which is really a problem with all that liquid in the middle. And I'll just go ahead and say it, for virtually all conditions, it's quite obvious, smoking and drinking does not help with any of these. You can look up studies on that if you want to. And I'm going to go ahead and say one of the main eye degeneration factors is UV exposure to your eye. There's lifestyle modifications, there's dietary modifications, several of them, which we'll get into. But really, what prompted me to start looking into this was eye floaters and a potential connection with bromelain/pineapple and studies around that. So I figured let's cover that first. So eye floaters are, of course, those little dots in your vision. They're a lot more visible if you look up at the sky, just based off contrast and brightness. And the vast majority, 3/4 of people experience floaters. However, it's more like 15 to 30% of those people have floaters to a degree that it causes them vision issues. And they also increase as we age, which makes sense when you learn what they are. We're talking about debris within the eye, whether they're little chunks of collagen or inflammatory proteins or something like that. So we have a few of these Taiwanese studies, one in 2020 and this other one here in 2022, where they took people with severe floater issues, at least most of them had severe issues, and they gave them varying levels of these fruit-based enzymes. We're talking about bromelain, which is from pineapple, papain, which is from papaya, life is papain, and phycin, which is from figs and other plants. They had a control group, and then they had 3 other groups, each of them taking different doses, either 1 capsule, 2 capsule, or 3 capsules of this 3-fruit mixture. And the results were, after 3 months, quite stunning. The disappearance rate of floaters was 55, 62.5, and 70% after taking 1, 2, and 3 capsules daily, respectively. So according to this study, at least, 70% of the people taking 3 capsules just got rid of their eye floaters, which is pretty amazing. And really, as they put it, the majority of people felt, quote, much better. That does not instill confidence. The almost unbelievable results continue with just overall vision improvements. You've seen the classic eye test chart where letters start out big and get smaller. Well, the score on that improved from 0.63 up here, which is, pretty bad, down to 0.19, much smaller letters. That's like a wild improvement. And we did see a stepwise relationship, again, like the disappearance of floaters, where the more capsules they were taking, the more of an improvement they saw. And that stepwise association does imply causation. Of course, more studies are always nice, but that brings us to why might this be happening? They talk about antioxidants and antioxidant content of these, but there's also the theory that bromelain, being an enzyme, and these other fruit enzymes literally break down collagen. So like some of it is getting into your eye and breaking down those chunks of collagen, and hopefully not the collagen you don't want to break down. We definitely need studies looking at the amount of bromelain, for example, that actually makes it into the eyeball, but a lot of it is destroyed in digestion, and then some of it in the bloodstream. And based off other drugs and their molecular weights, maybe we're getting like 2% in there totally speculative number. But these aren't actually the only researchers to tackle floaters. We also have the Irish, and they did a mix of various things, making it hard to determine what was actually effective, including vitamin C, lysine, as well as the extracts from grape and citrus. And they did see improvements in their floater disturbance questionnaire. Also a questionnaire that is useful when deciding whether or not to call the plumber. I'm so lame. But let's move on to the next sort of big area of eye degeneration, and that is that UV damage and ways you can stop it. I hope it has become very clear to you now that UV from the sun is the main cause of skin aging, of photo aging. There are undeniable pictures like this truck driver getting exposed on one side, looking 20 years older on that side, or blue jeans guy who just has like the legs of a 25-year-old and the rest of his body is definitely not from sun protection. However, we don't really see the same results necessarily of UV damage on our eyes, within our eyes especially. I will say cataracts is in many cases a result of UV damage, and that's directly visible. But those major causes of blindness I mentioned earlier, that cataracts as well as glaucoma and macular degeneration all have a major UV damage component. So how do you decrease UV exposure? Well, I will say some people are a little bit more genetically gifted with darker eye color, which helps. And that is a result of higher melanin levels, the same reason that people have darker skin, more protection there as well. But regardless of the color of your iris, which is where eye color differentiates, your pupil is letting light directly into your eye. And so the question is, what can you do to even protect the inside of your eye? And that is where we're lucky, and certain carotenoids, certain antioxidants build up even on the inside of our eye. That's the main place they build up, actually. And the two winners here are a bit complicated sounding. It's lutein and zeaxanthin. Again, carotenoids. These are yellow carotenoids. And now for those of you who are interested in more general anti-aging stuff, we can move to today's sponsor, Fatty 15. It's way better than Thicky 14. That stuff does not work at all. These little guys have pure C15, which is a fatty acid which has a ton of really growing research behind it and health improvement, whether we're talking about cellular health, longevity pathways, etc. They found that within 16 weeks, 72% of people taking Fatty 15 see a benefit, whether we're talking about deeper sleep, calmer mood, less snacking between meals, as well as healthier hair, healthier skin, improved joint comfort, etc. And one thing that sold me on it was a study comparing it to anti-aging drugs and the different pathways that it also works on. And yeah, it acts on 10 cell systems. In addition, it has 36 particular cellular benefits, in that sense beating out drugs and supplements used for anti-aging like metformin and the long-chain omega-3 EPA. They also have multiple randomized control trials on C15, like this one that found that supplementation lowered LDL, that bad cholesterol, and showed beneficial shifts in the gut microbiome, or this one which increased hemoglobin levels in young individuals, which could indicate stronger cells. And I've been taking it and feeling good. And I'm a big fan of how small the pill is. It's like one of the smallest ones I have. For those bigger ones, so much for longevity if you choke on the pill. And if you would like to try this award-winning, also vegan supplement, you can click the link below and use the code MIC, that's M-I-C, at checkout for 10% off your first subscription order. All right, let's keep it going. And I did a video in the past talking about how you might be able to change your eye color through these, and they are a determinant of eye color to some degree. I'd love to see more studies on this. A lot of it likely has to do with genetics, and they do build up in your iris where your eye color is determined again, but not as much as other areas of your eye. But then in researching this, I realized there's another one that also builds up in your eye, and that is lycopene. That also has an effect. That is from tomatoes, and of course that's the one where you cook it more and you get more absorption. And let's start by looking at macular degeneration here, because it's a huge issue, and we're talking about that macula, the retina, where you form your central vision, and you can end up with like dark blobs or blurry blobs in the very center of your vision, where vision matters the most. So you really don't want this. But from this meta-analysis, the highest versus lowest lutein and zeaxanthin intake resulted in an 80% lower risk of age-related macular degeneration, which is absolutely insane and amazing. And then we also have lycopene lowering the risk by 30%, which is still quite good. And we do know that it is the case that taking lutein and zeaxanthin, like from this study, you can increase the actual pigment density on the retina in the back of your eye, on your macula, which is amazing. And that increased density not only blocks blue light and decreases UV light damage, it also decreases the amount of free radical damage, oxidative stress from UV damage in your eyes. So it's like a 1-2 punch. But here's the problem. As this study mentions, the typical intake in the US diet, no surprise here, is like 1 to 3 milligrams a day of lutein plus zeaxanthin. but we really need to be closer to 6 or more in order to lower the risk of macular degeneration. So how do we get to that 6 milligrams or beyond? What foods are good? And well, we have goji berries with just a small handful would definitely get you way past that. Looking to a chart of more common foods, we can see that those dark cooked leafy greens just crush here. Whether we're talking kale, spinach, chard, or collards, probably between 1/4 and 1/3 of a cup of those greens to meet that 6 milligrams. And that's not even counting any of the other food that you're eating in a day. And this is where I get a little bit annoyed when I see people put eggs on the list of what you should eat for lutein and zeaxanthin, because you can see what varies by the chicken's diet. Eggs contain, from this study, as little as 0.2 milligrams of lutein and zeaxanthin. So yeah, if you get higher eggs, they might be around 1 milligram, but even then, you would still have to eat 6 eggs or like 1,200 milligrams of cholesterol. And for the other ones, we're talking about 30 eggs, which is really ironic when you consider another factor with age-related macular degeneration, and that is the issue with fatty deposits. One issue is drusen. It's not the only issue related to this, but that is fatty deposits on the retina of the eye that essentially have the same biochemical makeup, fatty makeup, as the cholesterol deposits in atherosclerosis in arteries. So it's no surprise that things like high blood pressure and high LDL or bad cholesterol are also associated with this age-related macular degeneration. So lipids, including that LDL, end up sort of leaking into the membrane of your retina, the Bruch's membrane, and causing issues there. Final point here, multiple genes that are connected to heart disease are also connected to macular degeneration that are literally like lipid transport genes. So keeping your LDL down is obviously a beneficial thing to do. Need I say who has low levels? Yeah, vegans do have the most ideal levels, often around 60 or 70, when the average meat eater is over 100. And that's a combined result of not eating animal fat and then also eating fiber, which helps prevent the sort of reabsorption of cholesterol-related things. And then we can just move right on to glaucoma, which, to be more correct, is actually a group of diseases that can affect your optic nerve. So it's not super duper simple here, but a lot of the causes are connected. And this is an issue that is 5 to 6 times higher in African-American populations. And obviously collard greens are a part of that Southern diet. Well, you got to get those because according to a study, high versus low collard green / kale consumption decreased the odds of glaucoma diagnosis by about 60%. Again, you know, those are sources of lutein and zeaxanthin and other antioxidants, so it makes sense. Though glaucoma has some UV exposure influence, it is really about optic nerve damage. That's the definition, which is most commonly caused by intraocular or inner eye pressure increasing, which can be caused from less drainage, from inflammation, etc. Pressure within your eye is connected to blood pressure. So of course, hypertension or high blood pressure is connected here as a risk factor. From this study, people with high blood pressure have nearly twice the risk of glaucoma, and potassium appears to have a role here. Potassium can lower your blood pressure by helping with your potassium to sodium ratio, and it might help in other ways, but we can see from this study here, higher potassium intake was associated with a 53% lower odds of glaucoma in people without high blood pressure. You know, the potassium could also just be associated with the foods that have potassium, as you can see here. Yeah, all those amazing fruit and vegetables. And another eye condition connected to high blood pressure and UV as well is cataracts. High blood pressure can damage the blood vessels of the eyes and promote cataract formation over time. And simply put, cataracts are protein buildup on the lens or in the lens of your eye that distorts your vision, lets less light through. Obviously, you don't want them. UV light also plays a role in that protein formation. And from this study, quote, evidence shows that lutein and zeaxanthin are important dietary carotenoids in preventing and reducing cataracts. They actually did a study on elderly Finnish people and found that high blood levels of lutein and zeaxanthin lowered the risk of cataracts by 41%. But it doesn't just stop there. We have other beneficial nutrients like vitamin C that are associated, and there was a UK twin study looking at 1,000 twins for a decade, and they found that those with higher vitamin C had a 33% lower risk of cataract progression. Pretty cool. And we're going to talk about diabetic retinopathy in a second, but we also have the issue in both of these diseases of these advanced glycation end products. Really, again, that combination of sugar and protein, etc., largely from having too high blood sugar levels And this is a case where those proteins can also lead to cataracts, not good. So you, of course, want to control your blood sugar. You want to prevent and fight diabetes as much as possible, which brings me to diabetic retinopathy, which is where we're once again talking about that back wall of the eye, the retina. And in this case, those high blood sugar levels, etc., can lead to damaging of those small eye blood vessels. There can be swelling, leakage, microvessel blockage, and you can even end up getting some extra blood vessel growth as a result of all of that. All these things hurt your vision. So again, obviously you want to be fighting diabetes, and I just have to mention from the Adventist studies that vegans had 78% lower risk of total diabetes. Obviously there's type 2 and type 1. Type 2 is something that people can get into remission, and type 1 is autoimmune. It's childhood onset, but just managing it, lowering your blood sugar levels on that is huge as well. And you can look to Mastering Diabetes for a program on that. So now I've got some other interesting vision issues, and perhaps the main one is just an obvious one of just getting more myopic or more nearsighted as you age. And that is, of course, due to the elongation, or as I like to call it, the footballification of your eyeball. And well, there are a lot of sort of poorly supported eye exercise regimens that may or may not help a bit. One that does have some more solid studies behind it is just going outside. I think we're meant to go outside. However, most of these are studies on children, but the results are still pretty stunning. For example, a meta-analysis found that increasing children's time outdoors by 76 minutes per day can decrease the risk of myopia by 50%. And there are a lot of studies really corroborating this, but the question is why? And one of the theories is pretty interesting from this study. Increased light exposure stimulating retinal dopamine release inhibits excessive eye elongation, a key factor in myopia development. So light in the eye, increasing dopamine, decreasing elongation, decreasing myopia risk. Pretty amazing. And so that makes you think back to, wait, aren't we trying to block all of the UV from damaging all these different parts of our eye? Again, that UV exposure is connected to like every major eye disease as we age. And yeah, and I think this is maybe where it's a balance. It appears that it doesn't have to be UV light to induce that. So I'd love to see a study on like UV blocking sunglasses and see if they still help with myopia with people outside, and also more studies on adults would be great. And then there's, of course, the aspect of being outside where you're actually just using your eyes to look further and using your eyes in a dynamic way, and how that can exercise your eyes and perhaps help a bit. But we can move right on to another important thing when you're aging, and that is night vision, especially for people driving and how dangerous that can be in accidents. And that's where lutein and zeaxanthin come in as well. Again, looking to this study, it just improved so many night vision metrics here. We're talking about all this contrast sensitivity, glare recovery time, and even improvements in the UFOV score of divided attention. I can't help but just imagine the researchers just throwing little UFOs around and seeing how distracted people get. Oh wait, that stands for useful field of view. Anyway, this is another area where getting enough nutrients is key. In particular, getting vitamin A and zinc, they work together. And of course, vitamin A can be made from beta carotene. There's been a little bit of sort of doubt around this, but we see from studies like this one on vegans that their vitamin A levels are the same. But I think putting some effort into raising some levels couldn't hurt. And it's the case that zinc plays a role in transporting that vitamin A from the liver to the eye. So you want to make sure you have enough zinc as well. Can just focus on zinc-rich foods or take zinc. To get more technical, the body converts beta-carotene into retinol, which is a key component of rhodopsin, the pigment in retinal rod cells that enables low-light vision. All right, now let's get to one that's a bit more rare, but I just felt like I had to add just in case somebody has that, and that is visual snow. And this is a situation where it almost looks like you have a noise filter on your vision, these specks, and it's kind of almost like you got the low-resolution package on life. And while there is a lack of research on this topic, it appears to have a more neurological basis. And we do have a somewhat recent study that found that there were some slight brain changes in people with this. They had differences in the activity of glutamate and serotonin networks in specific areas of the brain, less synchronized. A lot of the theories around this has to do with overexcitability of like the eye and the whole neurological system there, leading to these specks, with one theorized benefit being increasing magnesium or making sure that magnesium isn't low, because low magnesium can lead to that increased excitability of your visual cortex, which could lead to like more intense visual snow, etc. And there's a great rare piece of advice that I've seen from some ophthalmology websites just saying to lower stress. That's one way to help there. Anyway, awaiting more science in that area. In the end, each one of these conditions could definitely have its own like 10 to 20 minute video going through even more research and more potential sort of interventions and nutrients that are connected to it that I didn't have time to cover, but I think that we learned a lot. If you learned just one thing, you're welcome to like the video. But I think there's some key takeaways here. One, again, that UV damage seems to just be king here in terms of accelerating eye aging and therefore lowering it, whether we're talking about, UV blocking glasses, using actual antioxidants like lutein and zeaxanthin to increase your resistance to that UV damage, as well as the resistance to the oxidative stress from UV. Just seeing the whole breadth of research on lutein and zeaxanthin for all these different eye diseases is impressive. And then we have just the general improvement in lifestyle factors and risk factors, such as the LDL being connected to that drusen, that fatty buildup in the eye. And we also have how that hypertension is connected to various eye conditions, and also, diabetes and that high blood sugar being connected not just to diabetic retinopathy, obviously, but also to cataracts, for example. And then finally, the bromelain potentially helping the eye floaters, to me, is also fascinating, as well as that iris study on things like vitamin C, etc. You get the point. And then also, if you're concerned in general anti-aging and cell health, then you can, of course, click the link below and check out Fatty15 and use my code MIC at checkout for 10% off your first subscription order. And let me know down below if there's any eye-related stuff that I missed. There's so much going on here that I would love to see more insights. And of course, feel free to like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.